Hi, welcome to my channel, Rowie Kiwi. In today's video, I'm going to be drawing a Pokemon trainer and picking her Pokemon companion from my set of Pokemon cards. This is going to be a speed draw video, so let's go ahead and get started. For this drawing, I already had a pose kind of drawn up that I really wanted to rework. It wasn't really what I was looking for. I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. I know that the top half, I really want to redo the whole thing. I think it's not proportional. So here I go in with a kneaded eraser and just erase the whole top half. I'm gonna rework it completely. I'm using Pinterest in this to find some poses, just to have a little bit of reference. Usually when I work from the head down. So this is a little bit different for me. I was kind of struggling a little bit getting the proportions correct. That's why I keep going back and erasing probably the same area like 100 times, it felt like. Eventually I kind of get it how I want. And from there I move on to drawing the arms. I always find drawing arms so difficult. So I decided to ditch that and move to the head. Because I was having a little bit of trouble centering everything. It felt like everything was kind of slanted, so I figured drawing the head in first would help with this a little bit. I figure I should mention now that even though I've been drawing for a really long time, I have only recently started drawing full body pictures. This is mostly because when I was learning to draw, everybody told me drawing the face was the most difficult part of the entire human body to draw, so I should really focus on drawing the face. So that is what I did. I wholeheartedly focused on drawing the face for such a long time, and I was like, well, the rest of the body is supposed to be really easy, and I never even attempted to. And then it got to the point where I was so far along with just drawing faces, I was afraid to draw bodies. So now that I'm older, I recognize that that was not the correct approach. So I've been really working on anatomy a little bit, doing some figure drawings, just trying to get it situated a little bit because I really want to have full body drawings done. I think that they're really cool, that you can do a lot with character design with them. So that's where this is all coming from. And that's why, even though I feel like my skill level should be a little bit higher for this kind of stuff, it's just not there because I don't have the practice. So I feel like this is like a really good point to make in this video, is that first of all, don't take art advice that you get in middle school so seriously, because I did, and it ended up really setting me back in my journey with art. Because here I am at, I'm in my 20s, and I am struggling so hard to draw these poses and these bodies because I just do not have the foundations to be doing it. I'm building them now. I also feel like it's a good point to make that it's never too late to try something new and to further yourself. I guess I'll get back to what I'm actually doing in the drawing now. I've moved on to drawing the clothing in. I've decided that the pose is gonna be as good as it's gonna get for today. I'm pretty satisfied with it. I don't think it's perfect, but it didn't have to be. For the clothing and the outfit, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I decided maybe going with a little bit of an edgier style would be kind of cool. At this point, I'm really trying to think about who this character is and like what type of Pokemon they would have, just so I could kind of get a feel for the style of character I wanted. I ended up drawing like a skirt that I kind of own one, kind of like this. It's just a like a plaid skirt with a belt on it. I drew the belt the way that I like to wear it, where it's kind of tied in a knot and dangles down. I knew that I kind of wanted it to be like a A-line skirt or kind of maybe a circle skirt. I end up kind of straightening out the bottom edge here. I figured that the little waves kind of made it look a little funny and they weren't looking quite right, so I just got rid of them. I was really having trouble deciding what kind of shirt to give them, so I ended up kind of just going with this like turtleneck long sleeve idea. I figured once I had a Pokemon picked out, I could maybe draw their face or their type symbol onto the sweater to give it a little more personality, because right now it's literally just like a long sleeve sweater with no detail on it at all. Here I am trying to add in some like wrinkles and whatnot to the clothing. This is another thing that I really struggle with, is deciding where to put folds or wrinkles in clothes, because again, it's something I just have not had practice with. I've really been trying to go a little bit outside of my comfort zone with my drawings lately, so drawing clothing and full body poses is just kind of in that realm. You can kind of see me going off screen a little bit and stopping. This is because I'm looking at some reference photos. I was trying to figure out what kind of shoes I wanted to do. I knew I wanted them to be like chunky sneakers, but I wasn't really sure exactly what style. I kind of just ended up going with some really generic looking sneakers, kind of based off of the Sword and Shield sneakers that you can get, the trainer sneakers, because I really liked their design in the game. I thought that they were pretty cool. They're not 100% accurate or anything. I just ended up going with that kind of style of shoe. Shoes and the feet are another thing that I'm definitely not very comfortable drawing. The perspective on them is always just kind of weird and messed up. But instead of just quitting and not trying anymore, I push through and do my best. This is something else I've kind of had to learn over time, is that just kind of giving up and quitting on a project or drawing kind of doesn't really do you any favors. So I've moved on to the face now. I've decided to just get that out of the way because for the most part, everything on the body is complete now. She's got her clothing, she's got the pose, she's got her Pokeball, and she's got some funny looking hands. Not a big deal. I always start with the right eye, and it's usually the easiest one for me to draw. As soon as I move on to the left eye, you'll see I kind of struggle a little bit, but that's alright. Eyes that I draw tend to be more along the lines of sisters than they are twins, and I try not to stress it too much. I feel like that could kind of be a theme of this video, along with the Pokemon theme, is that not stressing so hard about making everything perfect when drawing. It's something that I've taken a very long time to learn, and I feel like it's just advice worthy of passing on to maybe someone else who's just starting. So the face is almost done now. I know another spot that I kind of messed up on was the lips. I kept having to erase them and redraw them over and over again, and I think it's because usually when I'm drawing, I have my face so close to the artwork, and while recording, you can't really put your face like right on the page almost to see what you're doing. So I ended up pulling the paper away from the camera for just a minute just to kind of fix the lips a little bit. I wasn't really sure where to go from here with the hairstyle and whatnot. I kind of wanted to keep it kind of simple. I didn't want it to be too dramatic or anything. So I just do really just such a basic hairstyle. It's just bangs and short hair, kind of wavy. Give it a little bit of interest. At this point of the drawing, I'm really just excited to pick out a Pokemon to give to this trainer. I decided that I kind of wanted to go with maybe a dark or a psychic type Pokemon for her, just to kind of fit with the theme where she was like a little bit edgy, and I'd be able to keep her color palette a little bit darker if I went with those Pokemon, in theory anyway. Now I'm just going through and kind of fixing up a few areas that I thought were a little rough, and adding some more lines to the hair, just add a little bit more texture. I always have to be really careful with this because I'm very prone to going super overboard with how much detail I put in the hair compared to the rest of the drawing. I don't really want the hair to be extremely detailed and the rest of the drawing to be a little bit more simple. It'll look a little bit funny or a little bit mismatched. Here, I'm getting ready to pick my Pokemon cards out. I did decide to go with the Dark and Psychic type Pokemon, so I pull them out of all of the cards I own, and I set them aside to be used later. So here I have the Psychic type Pokemon on the left and the Dark type Pokemon on the right. I start with the Dark type Pokemon because there are less cards for the Dark type. I kind of lay them out, I close my eyes, and pick the first card my hand lands on. I set it aside. I moved to the Psychic type Pokemon. There were so many of these cards, I ended up having to do 2 rows to make it a little bit easier to randomly pick one. And again, for this process, after all the cards are laid out, I close my eyes, I wave my hand around over the top of them, and the first card my finger touches, I take out. Alright, let's reveal our cards. So we'll do our Dark type Pokemon first, and it is Venipede. Alright, so this is a Bug type Pokemon also. That could be fun, that could be interesting. And then for our Psychic type Pokemon, we have Flabébé. So what do we want to do? I think I like the idea of doing Venipede better than Flabébé. Sorry, Flabébé. Okay, so this was the part of the drawing I was really looking forward to doing, was drawing the Pokemon and adding characteristics to the trainer to make it look like it was her companion Pokemon, you know, kind of like Ash and Pikachu. I always really like the idea of having like your one staple Pokemon, so drawing trainers that have a staple Pokemon that's a little bit more outside of the norm, like Venipede, was a really fun idea to me. That's why instead of just choosing a Pokemon off the top of my head, I decided to randomly draw from my collection of Pokemon cards because there are so many and there were so many options that I could have gotten something really different and interesting, even though I did choose 2 different types of Pokemon so that I'd still have a little bit of choice. I ended up actually pulling up a few reference pictures for Venipede because the art for the card is a little bit stylized and has the dramatic lighting in it. I wanted to have a really good, clear view of what Venipede looked like. I also decided that he looked a little mean, and I didn't want a mean-looking Pokemon for this character. I thought it'd be really kind of cute and funny if he had these wide-open, buggy eyes instead of the, like, squinty, slanty, almost angry-looking eyes. So instead of looking kind of like a more intense bug-type Pokemon, he kind of just looks a little derpy. And I really liked that, so that's what I went with, and that's what I kept. I kind of struggled a little bit drawing the face. It's kind of because I did not draw any like reference lines or anything, so I kept drawing it at this weird angle and too low, and I had to fix it a couple of times. But so far, so good on the Venipede. I think it turned out pretty well in the end, even though I did end up forgetting to draw some of the markings on him, which you'll kind of see that in a minute. I just got a little bit distracted and moved on before finishing him. So here I am just kind of comparing the card to the Pokemon that I drew. And moving up to the shirt, I decided that I wanted to draw the face of Venipede on her shirt. And instead of drawing one like she has, a kind of cuter, more derpy one, I drew the more serious and like typical Venipede. I thought it was a nice juxtaposition to her Pokemon and maybe her personality even a little bit. I like to imagine that she thinks her Venipede is just as fierce as every other Venipede you would typically run into. So here I am just kind of overlooking the drawing and getting ready to ink it. I use a kneaded eraser to lift a little bit of the graphite so that the ink will sit in the paper just a little bit better. Sometimes if you don't erase the pencil enough, the ink will just sit on top of the graphite and it can smudge really easily, and that's never fun. I also planned on coloring this with alcohol markers, so I really didn't want the pen to not be absorbed into the paper to just minimize the bleeding risk. Here I'm using the Spectrum Noir art liners or fine liners. I'm using I believe a 05 and an 03 nib size which I kind of wish I had done the smaller nib size across the whole drawing. I noticed a few areas that the liner was like really thick compared to the size of the drawing, and it was just a little not what I was going for. But that's okay. I also kind of really messed up on her hand on her hip. It ended up looking so weird, and later on I try and fix it just a little bit in the coloring process. I'm not sure how much it helped, but just so everyone's aware, I also know that the hand on the hip looks very funny and kind of claw-like. For the inking process, I will usually start from the top down, and I kind of like to save the face for last, just so I can take all the time I want on it. I tend to kind of rush through inking because it's not my favorite, and it can feel just a little tedious. I like the look of inking though, so I keep doing it. I don't really have a whole lot more to say on the inking process. I know that I kind of messed up in a few spots and had to kind of even out the lines by going back over them. I can be a little bit wobbly in some areas. A good example is like on the calf on the left leg. I kind of messed up and I go back and fix it. I also noticed that while I was inking these shoes, it's like completely off camera. You can only see the very top of the shoes. I've been trying to pay attention and move the sketchbook and maybe zoom in a little bit when I'm doing these smaller areas like this, but I just totally forgot to do it. So you just don't get to see me ink the shoes at all. Fortunately, the shoes are not exactly the most exciting part of the drawing, so I'm not that worried about it. I just figured I'd say something about it here. Another thing I kind of wish that I had not done was ink in the lines on the skirt. Later in the coloring process, I end up using the marker to go over the inking lines, and I think it just would have turned out a little bit nicer and looked a little bit nicer if I had not inked them. But that's just something to keep in mind for in the future. I also start inking Venipede down here, kind of off camera. He's half on, half off. I notice about halfway through, and I kind of scooch the sketchbook up. But by that point, I'm like almost done. I'm starting to get excited at this point because I know I am so close to being done with the inking, and I get to move on to the coloring process. And I really just want to pick out my markers. I end up going over and erasing the rest of the pencil marks from the areas I have finished inking. I kind of forgot to ink the face and the Venipede face on her sweater, so now I'm going back and doing that. I should have waited to erase until I got up to the face and the Venipede face on the sweater, but we're doing it now. This is the point where I swapped to the smaller nib size also. Which, like I said, I kind of wish I had used it for the whole drawing. I think it just was a better suited nib size. Another thing to point out is that I completely forget to draw some eyelashes on this drawing, and by the time I'm finished, I decide that it doesn't need them. That's something I tend to forget a lot, actually, is eyelashes. I don't know why, I just completely overlook them almost every single time. But for this kind of style, I don't think it's that big of a deal, especially if we're kind of looking at the Pokemon style, if we want to just pretend like these are similar in some way. In a lot of Pokemon games and whatnot, the characters don't really have eyelashes. They might have one or two on the ends of the eyes. So here I am pulling out my Venipede Pokemon card again, and I'm using it as reference for the colors that I want to use. For this particular drawing, I'm going to be using the Ohuhu markers. I thought maybe I could use my Spectrum Noir markers, but they're bullet and chisel nib, and I just really feel like dealing with that. I also put the Ohuhu marker page protectors underneath the paper because I'm using a Canson mixed media XL sketchbook, and this paper does bleed with the markers, so I did not want to contaminate the page behind it. Here I've pulled out my swatch book to hold my Pokemon card up against and kind of pick out some close colors. I know that I mostly want to use Ohuhu markers for this drawing, just to keep it simple. I end up using maybe a couple of my Copic Chow markers, but not too many. And I didn't really use them in any large areas either. This paper tends to really suck up the ink from the markers, and I did not want to waste any of the Copic ink doing that on this kind of paper. I also kind of knew at this point that I wanted to keep my color palette a little bit limited, and I ended up using just mostly 3 different colors of the Ohuhu markers for the majority of the drawing. If you're curious, I believe it is the Ohuhu brush marker in R5 and G6, and then I believe CG208. And when I get to the outfit, I end up using a little bit of the CG27 because too much dark on dark, a little too close to each other. So I just wanted to use a little bit of a lighter gray just to give it a little more variety in the values. Because for the most part, all of the color values in this are very same like level of darkness and saturation. So I kind of felt like it was getting a little muddied up just from everything being the same level of darkness and saturation. You can see that I've gone back and added the circle markings onto Venipede that I had forgotten earlier. I can't believe that I forgot to draw them in the first place because I feel like they're such a signature look for him. I feel like in every single piece of promo work and artwork of Venipede, his circle markings are just on full display, so I just cannot believe that I completely overlooked them. So I guess to go into the coloring process just a little bit, I mostly am doing flat coloring with the markers. I didn't really want to do a whole lot of shading. I did a little bit of cell shading towards the end, but not very much at all. And I'm not even sure it's all that noticeable, to be honest. Like I said, I just really wanted it to be more of a flat than anything. I wasn't trying to do anything super highly detailed. Because even though this is not exactly in the style of the Pokemon artwork, especially in the recent games and stuff, I still wanted it to kind of feel like it belonged in that universe. Like, yeah, you could see this being an actual Pokemon trainer. But I wasn't stressing super hard about making it in that particular style because I still wanted it to look like my art. And this part of the drawing is where I'm using the lighter gray. Initially I had chosen the darker CG208 for the my gray color, but I ended up thinking it was just a little too dark to use as an all-over color for this character because I knew that I wanted her to be wearing like tights and with the sweater. So using the super dark gray on the whole outfit was just going to make it look like super flat, and I just really didn't want that for this drawing. So the lighter gray it was. I feel like it would have been a little bit better if I could have used maybe 2 different grays for the sweater and the tights because I feel like they're just, I don't know, very plain. There's not a lot going on with them. I'm also using the colors that I use for the Venipede for her outfit because I really wanted them to be matching. I thought it would be a cute idea if this Pokemon trainer was so fond of her Pokemon, her little Venipede, that she dressed like him so that they were matching. At this point, I'm getting really close to being done with this drawing. The only thing really left to color is the hair, and like here, I'm adding in the color on the skirt for the plaid stripes. Again, like I said, I really wish I would have just left the lines unlined with the fine liner and just gone in with the marker, but that's not really a big deal. I think in the end, you can't really tell too much that the fine liner is there. It just would have been a little bit cleaner if I had not done that. So just a second ago, I used a white ballpoint pen in a vain attempt to try and fix the fingers on that hand where I kind of messed up on the lining. And it did not really help that much, so, you know, it is what it is. I ended up going in with colored pencils after this and adding a little bit more shading and detail. I ended up doing this off camera just because it was something I thought of afterwards. I hadn't initially planned on using the colored pencils with this drawing, but I thought it needed just a little bit more shading or something just to help bring the piece together a little bit more. So that's all I did. I added a little bit of shading with colored pencils at the end. which again is not shown on camera, but I will have a full view of the picture at the end so you can see the completed and finished product. I did end up going back in with the white ballpoint pen to add some highlights to the eyeballs of the Pokemon and of the character, just to give a little bit of life to them. I also forgot to draw on the pupils, so I added those to the trainer as well. And here's just a final shot of the artwork that I ended up with the two main colors of the piece. Alright, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!